My name is Piper Gunnarsson. I'm the General Director and CEO of On-Site Opera, and I thank you all so much for joining us. Tonight's panel discussion is a conversation that explores the incredible relationship between music and the mind, and specifically music and memory. This is a central theme in our production that's upcoming of Lucidity, a new opera by Laura Kaminsky and David Cote. And Sarah will describe a bit more about the opera in just a moment when I introduce her to come up here. The theme of music and memory has sparked so many rich conversations among the artists that are involved in this opera, and we've been privileged to connect with music therapists, music advocates, scientists who are studying the relationship between music and the mind. And we are excited to welcome you all into that process, into that conversation, and sharing this intersection of art and science. I do, of course, have a few very special people to thank for making this production and this event possible. Our board of trustees, first and foremost, a few of them are here this evening. Wave, say hello to them after this evening's event. Our incredible staff, some of whom are new to On-Site Opera, so I'm very proud of them for helping us put this event together. Our interns, our volunteers, so many people have helped us bring this opera and this event to life. I also want to thank the Interchurch Center, this building that we are in today. On-Site Opera actually has our offices here, and we rehearse our operas in this very room. It has been an incredible home for us just this year. We moved in January, and it continues to be a fantastic place for us to gather, to make art, and to prepare to bring opera all over New York City. Thank you as well to our institutional supporters, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, New York State Council on the Arts, the Howard Gilman Foundation, and to Opera America, who recently announced a grant in support of the Commission for Lucidity, specifically to support the composer Laura Kaminsky, through their Grants for Women Composers program, which is supported by the Virginia B. Toolman Foundation. And finally, a big thanks to a new aspect of our fundraising, our producers circle in support of Lucidity, which includes currently Charlotte Isaacs, Charles Renfro, and Judy Rubin. We have a special gift for you that I will give to you after this evening's conversation. We have a signed copy of Renée Fleming's new book for you, and thank you to Renée for signing those for our supporters. And I would encourage you all to please join them in supporting our production of Lucidity. Our ticket sales only support about 10% of our production costs, so every donation really makes a huge difference in bringing our opera productions to the stage, or not the stage, as the case may be. We'll begin our evening with a song selection from Lucidity. And to introduce this piece, I would like to welcome On-Site Opera's artistic director, Sarah Myers, who has also become a dear friend and colleague. Sarah joined midstream in the development process for Lucidity, workshopping the piece, and I think I can speak on behalf of all of us, including Laura and David, that she has thrown herself into it with immeasurable passion and compassion and grace and curiosity. So welcome, Sarah.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, Piper. It's my privilege to have a chance to introduce this opera to you all if you haven't learned anything about it yet. It's a really beautiful piece that I'm very excited that On-Site Opera will have the honor of premiering in November. In this opera, it tells the story of a retired singer in her twilight years who is grappling with dementia, while her son forsakes his own music career to care for her. Their lives converge with a young clarinetist and a music therapy researcher, igniting an exploration of music and memory. Amidst their individual struggles, moments of joy and profound sacrifice illuminate their intertwining paths. What we will share with you now is an excerpt from the very first scene of Lucidity. In this scene, our music therapy researcher, Dr. Claire Klugman, played by the marvelous mezzo, Blythe Gessert, she's working in her office, reviewing the current draft of the book she is writing. She is passionate and inspired by her subject matter, yet she finds herself blocked. We will share the first half of this scene with you now to jumpstart our discussion, and then we'll come back and finish the scene at the conclusion of our panel. So I'd like to welcome now to this altar Blythe Gisert on mezzo and Jason Worth on the piano.
Beautiful. Thank you, Blythe and Jason. I would now like to introduce our panelists for the evening, and then we'll welcome to the stage. First, Laura Kaminsky, come on up. Laura Kaminsky is the composer of Lucidity. She has composed several operas, often addressing social or political issues, including Some Light Emerges, Today It Rains, Hometown to the World, and As One, which is one of the most frequently produced contemporary operas in the United States. Welcome, Laura. Next to the stage, I welcome David Cote. David is the librettist of Lucidity. He's an accomplished playwright, journalist, and opera librettist, recently hailed for his operas Blind Justice and The Scarlet Ibis. Thank you, David. Next to the stage, we are very pleased to welcome this evening Miss Renée Fleming. Please come on up, Renée. Renée is a Grammy-winning and world-famous singer known for her beautiful performances in operas and recitals all over the world. Recently, Ms. Fleming has become very involved as a peer and an advocate and just an incredible voice in the study of music's intersection with health. She's a Goodwill Ambassador for Arts and Health with the World Health Organization and recently published this wonderful book that's sitting up here, Music and Mind, which I cannot recommend enough. We've all been paging through it as we've been working on this opera, and there are so many just incredible anecdotes and studies that are cited throughout this book about this incredible work that has been happening in this space. And finally, would it be opera if we did not have a last-minute replacement on the stage? Our friend Dr. Michael Shadlin, who we've been in conversation with for the last few months and works over at Columbia University in their neuroscience department, he sadly had to pull out at the very last minute due to extenuating circumstances, but we are very excited to welcome this evening Dr. David Phillips. Come on up here, David. Dr. Phillips is an adult and pediatric neurosurgeon specializing in a wide variety of intracranial and intracranial, and spinal problems. So thank you for all of you for being here this evening. I'd like to start with our artists of the evening, Laura and David. If you could just tell us a little bit more about the inspiration and your intentions in creating this opera.
Okay, well, there's a very sort of banal, kind of writerly, sort of spark that happened where I was on the subway, and I ran into a violinist friend of mine and asked where she was going, and she said, I'm going to a person's house to play for them. She's elderly and she has dementia, and so I'm going to play for her as part of this program called Music as Medicine. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, wow. I was like, you see a story. The musician, the person getting the concert at home, and perhaps a caregiver's son. And I thought, okay, what's the human relationship? What are the dynamics going on there? And so that was an idea I brought to Laura because we wanted to work with each other for years. And you like that idea, I guess.
It resonated deeply for me because my dad, and my sister Nina's here tonight, was suffering from dementia, from Alzheimer's, and music was the thing that gave him joy and freed him from all the horrors of the disease. And singing, he sang in a chorus that met here or next door, and it was like the thing he would rally himself to do. So it really sparked for us to go deeper and figure out all of these amazing stories about how music can go into these places where you think it's not possible to communicate or to hold on to yourself and find that freedom. And I have a student from SUNY Purchase on the composition program, and I hired her to come to my dad's house, and they sang Sondheim. And he was like happy as a clam, and he remembered all the lyrics. So that was the beginning of what is this story that we want to tell? And then there are a whole lot of other pieces to it along the way, which we can get into later, I'm sure.
Definitely. Something I've been thinking a lot about as I talk to people about this opera that we're producing and hear their responses to the concept of it and the topics that it touches upon. Someone recently commented to me that attending or engaging with the performing arts used to be much more regarded as a mode of education and cultural understanding, but that more and more it seems to be regarded as a luxury item or simply as entertainment, which broke my heart because I believe that art can be both. And something that I was just reading in this book, Renee, sort of struck a chord with me along a similar line, which is actually in the introduction of your book, which you wrote. You said, "The many of us who appreciate, create, or perform the arts intuitively understand their therapeutic effects on our lives." And yet, just a couple sentences above that, you confess that when you first attended that convening back in, I think it was 2017, by the National Institute of Health to open a discussion about music's health benefits, you even asked the question while you were there, why are scientists studying music? Don't they have more important things to do? And I love that you included that humility in the book and that openness to curiosity, and the response to that was very interesting. And so just kind of building off of this idea of starting to discover beyond the intuitive ways that we feel, especially those who work in the arts or support the arts, that we feel how much the arts affect us. Now it's starting to be studied more and more. Can you speak a bit more to what has really driven your curiosity to become an advocate in this space?
Well, I met Dr. Francis Collins at a dinner party in Washington, and I moved there just before the pandemic, and so I was able to ask him that question, why are scientists studying music? And he said the brain is the most complex object in the known universe, and we have a new brain institute, and we want to understand more about it. Turns out that music is kind of the most complex engagement that we can have if we're playing it. And it affects every known mapped area of the brain. Okay, I feel funny saying these things in front of you because you know more than I do, way more than I do. But he said, you know, we're discovering actually that because we have technology, we're discovering a range of benefits for people, for patients, for neurologic disorders, for chronic pain, for mental health, childhood development, and many other things. But also just for a life well lived. I mean, we are, my colleague Susan Magsamen at Johns Hopkins likes to say that we are actually feeling people who think. We're not thinking people who feel. So the feeling, the aesthetic part of us, the nervous system is much more important than we've ever thought, certainly in my lifetime. And so that's one reason why emotion is strong, social cohesion and connections are strong. And we've seen a lot in the papers recently about this mental health crisis. Dr. Tedros in Geneva, when I first met him at the World Health Organization, said his biggest concern, well, that was a year and a half ago, was the fact that depression is up 30% around the world. So, and just engaging with art reduces anxiety by 25% if you do some activity for 45 minutes. There's so many studies now really pointing to the benefits. And there'll be more. I mean, the plasticity of the brain is usually at the heart of almost everything that works.
I want to actually grab onto that phrase, plasticity of the brain. I've been seeing that so much in various articles, and we've certainly talked about it in our process of working on Lucidity and having all these exciting conversations. And because we are privileged to have a neurosurgeon with us today, I wonder, can you speak at all to just maybe for those of us who are unfamiliar with the term, what does plasticity of the brain even mean? Let's start there.
So plasticity implies that the brain continues to learn and to be moldable as we grow. So the idea is that, you know, you have all of these things that you learn as you're an infant, as you're a child, and then the old thought that once you lose something, it never comes back is not quite true. You can always, keep relearning and retraining different pathways in the brain so that you can overcome illness and you can overcome trauma, but also that you can develop new tricks, even as an old dog. So you can, pick up some new skills or integrate them into what you've already had. And so there's, trying to reassure people that as they're going through something that's pretty profound, there's also immense opportunity for them to, develop new skills and ways of navigating through that new environment that they're set up.
Thank you very much for explaining that further. Can you offer any neurological insights as to why music specifically has such a profound impact on the brain?
I was thinking we were getting some videos the past few days from my siblings of my toddler nieces and nephews of them just enjoying music. So it's one of those first things that kids can really identify with and participate in even before they're verbal. And seeing these cute videos of my nephew banging to the music playing beside him and dancing to it, and watching that as kids are going through their development and realizing that that's one of the first things they get. But then, and when you have an adult patient who's suffering from dementia, that's one of the last things to go too. So it's inexorably linked throughout all of our pathways, and it's one of the things that I treat is epilepsy, for example. And epilepsy is when you've got a little part of the brain that's starting to spark abnormally, and it is connected to other parts of the brain. And when that signal, that abnormal electrical activity starts traveling to other parts of the brain, you can get something that comes out as seizures. And epilepsy is interesting for many reasons, but there's even some descriptions of people who music is their trigger for their epilepsy. It's allowing that, one small part of the brain to spread elsewhere. We are very cognizant of how there's not one part of the brain that's in charge of music, that it's multiple parts, that it's more widespread than speech is, and it is something that is more elemental than speech, is both, from the infant side and from the adults going through dementia. It's amazing.
That is a perfect segue to my next question. So who here is familiar with the alphabet song? In Renée's book, there's a section by Dr. Michael Thought. Is that, I'm not sure if that's Tout, okay. Who's a professor of music and neuroscience, working a lot in this space up in Canada. And he has a wonderful chapter in the book where he describes a lot of the studies they've been doing. And he describes some studies involving brain wave analysis to better understand the relationship between music and memory, and describes using the ABC song as a model for this theory. The brainwave analysis showed that the brain could retain more information if learned with music than if it's learned just with speech, which speaks very much to what you were just saying, Dr. Phillips. And he summarizes that, and this is a quote, "Long-known favorite music can create a neural memory network. While music cannot reverse diseases like dementia, listening to personalized music can provide cognitive boosts." And so with this in mind, I'm just curious to hear, Renée, you, since you helped put this section into this book, and really any of you, what experiences you've observed medically or anecdotally or artistically relating to this idea of music's power to help form memories and retain information.
Music and memory are incredibly aligned. I mean, smell is also a very strong trigger for memory. But Dan Levitin, the neuroscientist who has a new book out called "They Say There Is a Secret Chord."
I'm reading it now.
Oh, you are? Said, yeah, he's terrific. But he said, it's this notion that we are, it's an older part of the brain that is the last affected by dementia and Alzheimer's, and so it has a little bit of protection. But I've also heard something about it being more of muscle memory. So science hasn't quite figured it out yet, why it's the last memory to go. I first saw this with my husband's aunt, who I only met her in her last year of her life, where she was bedridden. She didn't speak, she didn't move. But if you prompted her with, "I'm looking," she would sing all the lyrics to the song, the 4 or 5 songs, perfectly. And evidently, they're songs from youth, from sort of, 8 to 16 that are most powerful. And that's another thing I said, I've asked scientists why. And they said, well, this is when a little bit of independence is beginning to form. Your personal relationships with your friends are important. And so the music has a lot of meaning. And we'll see if that holds for future generations who have a whole lot of other references, cultural references, whereas in my generation it really was, oh, I got this new CD, LP. Can I make a cassette tape of it? When you collected and shared them, and it was a big deal. So, but it's pretty fascinating, I think. So I had a friend who had a brain bleed not long ago, and she said the only thing that alleviated her pain was listening to Jimi Hendrix as loud as she could possibly play it.
Wow.
So when I asked the neurologist at the NIH, what do you make of this? Because I was surprised. And they sent me an fMRI study that had, excruciating pain with, blue and red circles around it in the fMRI, and then the same person listening to music a minute later, and all the red circles were gone. So it really does. And they don't know if it's distraction. They think it's possible, but I don't know. So and then I spoke 2 nights ago, and a woman raised her hand at a small donor event, and she said that her husband had total aphasia, and she took him to a concert of Bach that he loved, and he spoke for 45 minutes about the music. He just started speaking.
Wow.
So I had never heard that before. Have you come across that?
The example that I think of is, a stutterer who can sing but has more difficulty speaking. Like the way that the connection unlocks all the other, locked parts of your brain is amazing. And so I love these stories. I find them utterly
It's amazing,
fascinating.
yeah.
Well, there's a story in the book, Conchetta Tamino's chapter, who worked with Oliver Sacks and is an active music therapist right now, runs an institute. And she tells a story about a man who was very much suffering from dementia and couldn't recognize his wife. And then Connie was playing for him, and when the wife was there, and he suddenly turned to her and said, "Mary, where have you been? I've been looking for you." And so there was an opening in the clouds. Yeah. And I know it's never touted as a panacea or a cure, really, but I think there's evidence that there is some improved communication afterwards.
When Connie's trying to extend those periods for her patients to see if they can be retained for a little bit longer, because it's great for families too.